What is going on, everybody? AHS Rules back again with another video. We're here for another edition of Shooting the Breeze, the 28th edition, and this is another loaded episode following last week's loaded episode where we did predictions for Wrestle Kingdom 18 and the final week of the regular season for the NFL. And now this week we'll be doing predictions for TNA's return. It used to be called Impact. Used to be called TNA. Then it used to be called Impact Wrestling. Now it's back to TNA Wrestling, and they have a pay-per-view event this weekend titled Hard to Kill. And we have Wild Card Weekend. It might even be called Super Wild Card Weekend. I'll probably just call it Wild Card Weekend in the title / thumbnail. And this week we do have NBA notes if you do care. Last week I was too lazy to come up with some, but this week I have a handful. So let's get right to it. You can't see the hat, but the hat matches the shirt because I have the old UFC logo. This is Reebok, and guess what? This is a Reebok UFC shirt. I did get this stuff on clearance like 5-6 years ago, and I'm very much waiting until the Venom UFC stuff goes on clearance before I buy any of that to get updated. But, maybe that's not really needed. That does not matter. You're here for Shooting the Breeze, and here we go. First thing first, like I said, we got some NBA news. I have 3, technically 4. First one is the main one. I very much hope the Toronto Raptors trade Pascal Siakam. This is the time of year that I hate, mainly because it is rumor after rumor after rumor, and a lot of the rumors that we see via the NBA, Twitter, social media world, it's just, like I said, it's rumors, and nothing ever comes out of some of those. And it's just, we get some of the most random stuff, and random trades, and random signings that take place. That's the good stuff. But the rumor part, I hate, because of just a lot of them don't really take place. And, like I said, one of the rumors, probably one of the bigger rumors going around right now is that the Toronto Raptors want to trade Pascal Siakam. There's a handful of teams that would like to trade for him. The Indiana Pacers, the Sacramento Kings, the Golden State Warriors. I personally hope that they trade him, and the main reason why is that they have kind of built a good young foundation there in their next phase with R.J. Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, and a former Rookie of the Year and Scotty Barnes. And the thing is, with Pascal Siakam, he is kind of the last of their old era. And I'm going to make a very good comparison here. Slam Magazine, they make magazines, obviously. And kind of in the more like, they've always done it, but I've noticed it in the last 5 or so years. They've done these like team covers. The 2 that come to mind, there's one from the 2020 season with the Boston Celtics. It had Kemba Walker, Marcus Smart, Gordon Hayward, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum on the cover. And through those 5 guys are not on the team anymore. And the one that fits into this Toronto Raptors subject, there's a one for the Toronto Raptors. This is the year, of course, after they won their championship. And the cover had 7 freaking players on it. It had Serge Ibaka, Marc Gasol, Norman Powell, Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet, OG Anunoby, and Pascal Siakam. And like I said, that all of those guys were on the championship team the prior year. And I'm not going to say overseeded expectations, but Kawhi left the team, and the next year they were still competing at the same level and were a very good team still. But like I just said, 6 out of those 7 guys are no longer on the team anymore. The team is getting younger. I would just very much forward seeing Pascal Siakam on a different team, mainly because, like I said, the Raptors just made this great win-win trade for them and the Knicks. I think the problem is the Raptors feel they have to 100% win the trade. Now, you never really can determine who. The only real way you can determine who wins a trade is if player B that is on the other team just completely does not play and is just ass and is not on the team the next year, or if the trade leads to a championship, which for the Raptors, it will be a lot of years from that. But the team trading for Siakam, they're kind of hoping they're in the title hunt. They're getting a former all-star caliber player on their team. That's what I'm saying. The Raptors, They don't want just anybody. So, for example, the trade package that I've seen rumored for Siakam involving the Sacramento Kings. Because, like I said, the Kings are a very good team. They traded for Siakam. I would put them in the title hunt in the Western Conference. Right now, they're kind of in the tier below. But the rumored package is Davion Mitchell, Kevin Huerter, Harrison Barnes, and a pick, maybe two. I think just one. Harrison Barnes, rotation-wise, would be replaced with Keegan Murray, I would feel. Kevin Huerter, who's had a down year compared to previous years and kind of in the lineup been replaced by Malik Monk. And then Davion Mitchell, who it just depends on what game, what day. I love the saying, just depends on what day of the week it is. Sometimes he's good, sometimes he isn't. For the Raptors, it's kind of like, we don't really want any of that. We want Keegan Murray. And I just don't feel the Kings should give up Keegan Murray. I really like Keegan Murray for that team. And so I feel they have that thought process with every trade. Where with the Knicks, OG Anunoby, or I always get it confused now because I always keep saying OG Anunoby when I mean to say RJ Barrett. But RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley, hypothetically, if they're on the table for a lot more teams, the Knicks probably could have got a better player than OG Anunoby. I don't think, as of right now, they're losing sleep over that trade because they're 5-0 and still competitive and still do have trade pieces to get maybe one more guy that they feel fits their team. But, again, I think, in the mindset of the Raptors, they feel they have fleeced. They, in the future, have the two better players involved in the trade, and in almost any trade for Pascal Siakam, I just don't see that happening. And I'm going to, again, compare it to the past, where we had the rumored Kyle Lowry trade his last year there, and he was going to get traded to the Sixers. And it was Matisse Thybulle, Danny Green, and maybe one other player. But the Raptors didn't feel like doing it, and they're like, we'll opt to sign and trade Kyle Lowry in the offseason. Moral of the story, I'm not patient. I want to see things get spiced up, pun intended, because his nickname is Spicy P. I'd like to see Siakam on a different team. That way we can completely move on to this new era for the Raptors. But I'm very much used to seeing the Raptors not make these trades. And again, I can even compare it to last damn trade deadline where I wanted OG Anunoby on the Memphis Grizzlies. And to be fair, obviously, they waited and got the better damn package almost a year later. I'm just not patient. But I'm not a Raptors fan, so I don't expect to see a lot more Raptors action. Who knows? They could be a play-in team this year. It just depends on what they do. And like I said, I hate the trade deadline season because we get a lot more rumors and what ifs than what actually freaking happens. And hopefully this year I'm wrong. And every rumor that I see, DeJounte Murray getting traded, Pascal Siakam getting traded, Chris Paul getting traded, I'm just naming the names off the top of my head. Maybe they all get traded and they're like, ha, you were wrong. I would take the L on that. Again, I can't really be wrong on an opinion. Actually, I could be. Who cares? Next one. Shout out to the Los Angeles Clippers. I, for one, was not one that was very harsh on them after the James Harden trade and they were losing games, but there are a lot of people that were, and they've figured things out, a.k.a. moving freaking Westbrook to the bench. And now the big, I'm not going to say the big elephant. There is a lot of, the saying elephant in the room. There's a lot of freaking elephants in the room because Harden, George, and Kawhi were all going to be expiring contracts, and now Kawhi Leonard and Paul George have extended to stay there. I think this is a good, mainly because if they want to rebuild, I think rebuild would be the better term for this. If they wanted to rebuild in the future in the next 2-ish years, and they're just ready to move on to this new era, like I was comparing with the Raptors earlier, they could trade Kawhi and PG to get something out of it. That being said, anytime I talk about this, I do not talk about the money side of things because I don't feel like doing the damn math. And trades sometimes are very broken where a hypothetical trade could happen and you didn't know it was on the table and so players are traded for these higher contracts, which Kawhi and PG now have, even though they had beforehand. More of the story, I'm shouting out the Clippers because a lot of people were doubting them. I wasn't. And they're doing very good. That being said, they do play the freaking Grizzlies on Friday, so maybe I should stop hyping them up now. Last note, Phoenix Suns, I plan on doing a video in the future, and the exact date, I don't know off the top of my head, but the time storyline-wise, I will say, my first video on this channel, if you go and look, is me reacting to the Kevin Durant Phoenix Suns trade. Once we get to the 1 year mark, I feel that like right now we're kind of at the 11th month mark. Once we get to that 1 year mark, I'm going to reflect on a lot of the things that has happened to the Phoenix Suns over that year period. But it seems that in this like last week, there's been a lot of harsh opinions and realities coming up front with the team. But I will reflect and react to that more in the future. So those are my NBA notes for the weekend. Now we move on to the predictions. We got a loaded Saturday for wrestling. We have a New Japan Strong card that I will not be watching live. I will just say it's a strong Saturday in general because we have NFL playoff games. We have AEW Collision / Battle of the Belts. It is very funny that the last time that TNA / Impact had a pay-per-view, it was competing with another AEW Collision / Battle of the Belts. And then we have this New Japan Strong card that I'm talking about. So, my watch schedule, I plan on DVRing Collision / Battle of the Belts. Watch it after Hard to Kill. Have the NFL playoff game playing on... I don't know if I want to put it on the laptop or the TV because it's a Peacock exclusive game, which that's very funny. Talking a little bit more of that in the future. But I think I'm looking forward to Hard to Kill the most because this is a loaded card. And I will also say this. I have always called this company TNA. I found it very difficult to ever call it Impact Wrestling. And now that they've changed the name back to TNA, I have caught myself slipping sometimes and saying Impact Wrestling. So, in the set of predictions, I will be interchanging between TNA / Impact Wrestling. And, I just hope I don't get corrected. But as of right now, I believe we have 10, sometimes it might be 11. I haven't wrote down matches. So, here we go with the predictions. The first three on the pre-show. First one being Rich Swann versus Steve Maclin, a battle between two former TNA / Impact World Champions. I predict Steve Maclin to win this matchup. Next, we have a tag team matchup between four men who have been in TNA / Impact Wrestling for a long-ass time. Eddie Edwards, who has been there for 10 years. Brian Myers, who his first TNA appearances were in the GFW invasion angle that... normally when we get invasion angles in wrestling, they last a long time. That invasion angle lasted like a month. And that was pretty crazy. And then two originals who have been on and off on Impact for the past couple of years. But they were there in the very beginning. Eric Young and Frankie Kazarian. I predict the team of Eddie Edwards and Brian Myers to win. Because the next night, a TV taping, they have a massive matchup as they will be teaming with Moose to face the Motor City Machine Guns and Okada. I also forgot to mention this. I'll mention this once we predict this last match. Remind me to talk about this. You can't, but I'll remember, hopefully. Last matchup on this pre-show in a no DQ digital media title match. Tommy Dreamer versus Crazy Steve. I have seen a lot of TNA fans talking on Twitter and online. They're ready for a new damn champion, and I think I agree with them. I predict Crazy Steve to win. What I was wanting to remind, it's been a very weird build to this pay-per-view because essentially, if I might be a little bit wrong, they've only had like 2 proper episodes of Impact since Bound for Glory. Because the week after Bound for Glory, they did a Bound for Glory recap episode. And then they had their UK shows that they did. And they did 1 to 2 recap episodes of that. Then they had the 2 proper episodes of Impact that involved Will Ospreay versus Josh Alexander and Alex Shelley versus Jonathan Gresham. 2 very great matches. And then they just started doing recap episodes. They did a TNA / AAA episode. They've just done best of episodes. So this has been an extremely weird build to this pay-per-view, but I have not seen this week's episode of Impact because I'm filming this prior to it taking place, but it's supposed to be a breakdown and like actual preview of this event, which I feel is very much needed because of I feel the lack of the build to the event. I feel that if I'm harsh on AEW and their builds to their pay-per-views. I should feel the same way towards TNA. But let's get to this. First matchup to talk about on the main card, Josh Alexander versus the debuting Alex Hammerstone. I am familiar with him from his work in MLW, but I've not watched MLW in about a year, and I feel that a lot of the times that I was watching him in MLW, he was a champion, because he was their world champion, and he held another championship in the company, but I don't know what the hell it's called off the top of my head, but very impressive. He has a very impressive resume. He's going against Josh Alexander, and it very much seems that if TNA is bringing in like a big talent and a big name talent, they put him in the ring with Josh Alexander. The obvious example being Will Ospreay and even Zack Sabre Jr. I know that was a tag team match last month, but it still counts. I predict Josh Alexander to win this matchup. Next matchup, PCO versus Dirty Dango. I'm going to go with PCO. We have a all-women's Ultimate X match between Giselle Shaw, Zaya Brookside, Jody Threat, Tasha Steelz, Alicia Edwards, and Dani Luna, which I will apologize. I know all of them except for Dani Luna. I'm not even going to try to think because I don't know. I predict Zaya Brookside to win. It's her. All these other competitors competed in TNA before. This is her debut. So what a bigger debut than winning Ultimate X. Next matchup, a crazy tag team title match between ABC, the Rascals, Speedball Mountain, and the Grizzled Young Veterans, who will also be making their TNA debuts. And then it's very much the same thing that I just said about the last match. I think this matchup, however, each team, there's 4 teams, 25% chance for all of them to win. And I think this was probably the hardest match to predict because I could build an argument for all of them. But I think I'm going to go with the Grizzled Young Veterans winning. Next, for the Knockouts title, Trinity versus Jordynne Grace. I predict Trinity to retain. She's had a great title reign thus far. Next, the match I'm looking forward to the most out of all 3 shows that I've named as well. For the X Division Championship, Chris Sabin versus Kushida versus El Hijo del Vikingo. Chris Sabin, I ain't not gonna lie, it is cold as hell. My nose is about to get very snotty. X Division title match. Chris Sabin is one of my favorites. He retained against Kenta at Bound for Glory. I could see Kushida winning this because he just signed with TNA, and I wouldn't mind seeing him have an X Division title run. But I am biased and will stick with Chris Sabin, one of my favorites of all time. And now we have the main event matchup for the TNA World title. Alex Shelley versus Moose. I predict Alex Shelley to retain. Now, I'll say this. I expect a lot of surprises to take place on this event. There's supposed to be a signing / a worlds colliding type moment to take place. I have absolutely no clue what it is, and I don't even want to speculate on it. I just want to see the event taking place, and then, oh my God, this is a big moment. So we'll see what happens with that. So that is my predictions for Hard to Kill. And now we get to the last set of predictions for the video. NFL Wild Card Weekend. We have 7 games to talk about on Saturday, Sunday, and even one on Monday, which is very weird that they've been doing these. I think this is the 3rd year that they're doing these Monday games. That being said, I wrote down my regular season predictions. Out of a 200, I believe if I counted correctly, there are 272 games. At least this is what I have wrote down. Out of these 272 games, I predicted 169 of them right. Nice, which leads to a 62%. That's very interesting. My best record was Week 17. I got 13 out of 16 right. My worst one was Week 7. I got 4 out of 13. I got 4 out of 13 right. I definitely don't think that's a 9. I think that's a 4. Week 10, I got 6 out of 14 right. So, in case that was a 9. So, 169 out of 272. Now, I was thinking of potentially predicting all the games now, but I want to keep these predictions going for as long as I can. How many more that we got? We got this week. We got the divisional round. We have the conference title games, and then we have the Super Bowl. So we have 4 more weeks left of predictions. I'm not going to lie to y'all. Y'all just see me look at my hand. There's a goddamn thumbnail or a thumbtack in my shoe, and it did not land in my foot whatsoever, and I have no clue where that thumbtack came from. So that is a genuine surprise you just saw there. Let's get to these predictions. The 5-seeded Cleveland Browns versus the 4-seeded Houston Texans. Now, I will say this. I forgot to say this. I'm glad I did that. I just saw this trophy and it reminded me. The trophy doesn't matter because it's not the one I'm talking about. I did win my fantasy league. I've talked about it for 18 freaking weeks. I would imagine you're probably sick and tired of me talking about it, but it was I made a big deal about this year because I lost last year's fantasy league by half a freaking point. Half a point. And I really, really wanted redemption this year, and I was able to get that with winning one of my 2 fantasy leagues. It was a Week 18 league, and I think I have learned that I will not be doing that. I will try not to. It will be a very much draft time decision if I do a Week 18 league again, but I was very nervous. I was up, I believe, 43 points going into the last game, Bills and Dolphins, where my opponent had Tyreek Hill. And anytime I'd flip on the game, Tyreek Hill was catching the freaking ball, and there's the obvious chant, and it could have went into overtime, and I'm like, Tyreek Hill's going to continue catching this ball, and I'm going to lose. That was not the case. I won my fantasy league. That being said, the main reason I am saying this is last week, I predicted the Indianapolis Colts because I wanted Michael Pittman Jr. to have a great game. He had a great first quarter, then they quit giving him the damn ball. They kept running the ball, and Jonathan Taylor had a great game. And then they did not give him the ball, the play that mattered the most. So I should have picked the Texans. I had a bias to pick the Colts, and it kind of made me look a little stupid. So that being said, I'm going with the Texans to win this matchup. This would be great. If they went on a crazy-ass run, that would be a little bit nuts. So I'm picking the Texans. Next, in a game that the last that I looked, the temperature was supposed to be like -4 degrees. It might be a little bit warmer. Now, it's definitely not going to be warmer. Might be even a little bit lower by that time. The 6-seeded Miami Dolphins versus the 3-seeded Kansas City Chiefs. I'm not going to factor in the weather. I do think this either has the potential to be the best game of the weekend or the worst game because the weather, they're just going to run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. I think I'm going to go with the upset. I'm going to predict the Miami Dolphins, and I would very much love that. That way we get it right out of the way. We're going to be new Super Bowl champions this year. I know very rarely, if ever, we never get repeat champions in the NFL, but it's just kind of like, it'd be very much Elimination Chamber-esque in the WWE. The one year where Edge went in as champion, then he was the first guy eliminated. Like, we're getting a new champion. I would love it if we got that right away. So I'm going to predict the Miami Dolphins. Next, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the 7th-seeded Pittsburgh Steelers against the Buffalo Bills, who are number 2. I'm going to predict the Bills, meaning we would get a Dolphins-Ravens matchup and a Texans-Bills matchup. Now we got the NFC games to talk about. The Green Bay Packers, my gosh, darn, Green Bay Packers made the playoffs. I'm happy about that. I predicted them 18 freaking weeks. I was right 9 of those times. And you know what? I'm going to continue to predict them every chance that I get. They're going against the 2-seeded Dallas Cowboys. I don't care. I'm picking my Packers. Why wouldn't I? I'm glad that we're in the playoffs, and I hope we continue. I hope I get the chance to see them continue playing. It very much brightens my day. Next, probably the best game of the week, and I know that a lot of people are talking about the storyline aspects. The 6-seeded Los Angeles Rams playing the 3-seeded Detroit Lions. The Lions are finally in the playoffs, and guess who they got to face? Their old friend, Matthew Stafford. I think that is a crazy-ass game. That's probably why it is the Sunday marquee game. I'm going to go with the Rams to win. They have won a Super Bowl more recently. I know a lot of those players are still not on that team, but the main three, Aaron Donald, Matthew Stafford, and Cooper Kupp, are still there. So I'm going to predict the Rams. Now we have the last game. I think probably the most difficult one to predict. The 5-seeded Philadelphia Eagles, who are 1-4 in their last 5 games against the 4-seeded Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I think I'm going to do it. I'm going to predict the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to win this game. And then Monday, if you're an Eagles fan, I would just delete social. If I was an Eagles fan, just turn your phone off. I don't think any good's going to come from talking and like hyping up this game. If you win this game, just it worked for you. Just don't even look. Don't even look. It's not going to be a pretty sight for Eagles fans because it has not been a pretty sight for the past month. Now, this is when it matters most. I would say I'm sorry, but I really ain't. So, that is it for this episode of Shooting the Breeze. I am going to wipe my nose and get a little bit warm because, like I said, it's about to get very cold. So, hopefully, we can all stay warm, stay safe. I thank you for watching this video again. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.